Okay, I would say this is a good moment to get started. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lynn Leppert. I'm professor of computational chemical physics at the University of Twente in the Netherlands. Right now, I'm a visiting scholar at the University of California, Berkeley, which is why it's quite early in the morning for me, hence the weird lighting on my end. So I'm going to moderate this session. You are in the breakout room for the domain P. And we have three wonderful panelists who will present their insights on obtaining an ERC starting grant with you and answer all of your burning questions. Our first panelist is Peter Nagy, who is at the Budapest University of Technology and Economics. Peter, do you want to introduce yourself very briefly? Oh, we can't hear you. It's a good moment to check.
Hello, everyone. Yeah. Is it better now? Okay. Welcome, everyone. It's an honor to be invited here to talk about ERC. My name is Peter Nagy. I'm from Budapest. I'm a chemist by training, and I'm in the borderline discipline of computational and theoretical chemistry. So also some physics and computer science is involved in my research. And I will talk about my experience mostly from the starter and the EU13 perspective a bit later.
Great. Our next panelist is Manuel Salom at the University of Santiago de Compostela in Spain. Manuel?
Yes, good afternoon to everyone. So I'm very happy to participate in this event. And I'm a research professor at CIFUS University of Santiago de Compostela, and I'm also a chemist. And well, I was granted a ERC 3 years ago, and I will also share my experience when preparing the ERC starting grant proposal.
And then finally, we have Nicolo at Umeå University in Sweden.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. So I am an assistant professor in physics. I'm an experimentalist, and I got the ERC the last call. So I think I have the fresher experience on that. And I will also talk about my own experience and try to give you some tips on how to perhaps writing a perfect proposal.
That sounds excellent. Thank you, everyone. So what we are going to do is basically that all three panelists are going to give a presentation of roughly 10 minutes, as just announced. You can ask your questions in the chat anytime. But we will only have the Q&A session to answer all of these questions after the three presentations are finished. You can also then, of course, raise your hand, just speak up, but do ask anytime in the chat if you want to. All right, so without further ado, I would say let's come to the first presentation of Manuel. Can you share your screen, please? Let's see whether this works. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay.
It's not in present. Yes, now it's in presentation mode. Go ahead.
Yes, as mentioned before, I would like to share my experience with preparing the proposal and also to give some tips and useful resources that at least work with me. And also, I was granted to the call of 2021, so 3 years ago, and I know that there are some changes now. So the first question you may have is to deciding why to submit proposal. As you know, there are a maximum of 7 years after your PhD. And also, if you are rejected at stage 1, you may not allow to apply for the next or 2 next calls. So this is quite important. In my case, I selected to apply in my 5th year after my PhD. Why? Because in case of rejection, I will have another possibility to apply in my 7th year after the PhD. But in any case, I think it's better to not wait until the last year. So start as soon as possible to apply for the starting grant. Then the second question you may have is decide the panel that you are going to apply. In my case, I was choosing between 2 different panels in the chemistry, synthetic chemistry and materials, the panel 5, or the panel 11, that was the materials engineering. And finally, because my topic was more related to the conductive porous organic materials, and there are some subtopics in the panel 11, I decided to apply in the 11th panel. Also, you can check the panel members in the past, in the previous calls, and normally the 60% of the panel members rotate every 2 years. So probably you can also check the panel members in the previous calls. This is quite important also to know more or less which are the panel members. Then this is the timeline in my case when preparing the starting grant. I started to think about the idea of the project in September 2020, which type of materials I wanted to develop, the properties that I wanted to optimize, the potential applications, and then I started to read some literature on specific topics. And also, this is quite important, I also read some winning proposals. You can check in some repositories that I will show later, some winning proposals. In November, I started to write the part B1 and also the CV. And in December, more or less, I had my first draft, the B1. Then I sent the part B1 to some researchers and professors for feedback. This is also quite important to receive as much as feedback possible, because especially if you send the proposal to professors or researchers from different fields, this is quite important. And then in February, I started to write the part B2. And in March, more or less, I have the final project, and I ended with some final revisions. In April, I submitted the proposal. In June, was invited for the interview, which is the stage 2. In October 2021, I had the interview. And finally, in December, I got the good news because I was invited for the grant preparation. So here, my main advice is take your time. In the writing part, I took 3 or 4 months, especially because I wanted to have some time for the feedback from different researchers. Okay? So this is one of the most important advices, take your time. Then in my case, as mentioned before, the CV was a little bit different than now. We had a template, but of course we could, I changed a little bit the template with some subtopics. I think this is similar to now, the education and academic positions. I highlight my mobility, also highlight your achievements and awards. This is also similar now. I highlighted also my contributions in specifically later in the other part. You can also include your metrics. They are not decisive because they can change also depending on the field that you are working on. But I think it's also good to put your metrics. And then I also highlight the main collaborations and teaching. I think that there was a question before about teaching, supervision of students, master students, PhD students, etc. Then when I submitted my proposal, there was these 2 pages of yearly achievement track record. In my case, I highlight the contributions in my 5 most relevant articles. In my case, in all the papers, I was the first author or corresponding author. I highlighted also my contribution in the different articles and how, for example, in this case, my PhD experience was applied in my postdoc position. Okay? I applied some of my knowledge from my PhD to the postdoc position. And also, you probably need to show the independence, so at least you can select 1 or 2 papers without your PhD supervisor. So showing your independence, I think this is quite important when preparing your application. Then the part B1, as highlighted before, you need to be so synthetic. In my case, I put 1 or 2 pages to the introduction and state of the art in the topic. I prepared a detailed analysis or figure of merit on some properties of the materials that I wanted to develop for a certain application. And then I prepared an overview of the project in a very schematic without going into much detail, because this will be in the part B2. Okay, and it is also important, always base your experience or your work on theoretical calculations, not on trial and error. Also try to have your proposal review as many people as possible, as mentioned before, because this will improve a lot your proposal. Then in the part B2, you need to go into the details. Yeah, I think here also you need to be humble. You must rely sometimes on collaborators to do some specific measurements or calculations. So this should be also explained in the proposal. And in my case, I did a risk gain analysis. I highlighted the riskiest two projects, but also the least risky and most feasible projects. And finally, for the budget, you need to be realistic. Explain a little bit how you will spend the money from the project and the equipment that you will buy. And then I submitted the proposal in April 2021. When I passed to the interview, I was in Portugal, in Aveiro, and the university had the service for preparing the interview. They give you some tips for the communication and for the presentation of the project. And I think the most important part to me was the mock interview, where some professors acted as panel members, because they gave me some tips that were very useful for the questions in the interview. I also did a list of possible questions for the interview, the answers. You need to be prepared for any unforeseen event. Okay, some technical issues, for example. You need to be as concise as possible in your answers. I was able to answer around 18 or 20 questions in 20 minutes, and prepare and practice as much as you can. So this is a lot of super important. Okay, these are the typical reasons for rejection. For the PI, normally it's the insufficient track record or insufficient potential for independence. And for the project, sometimes they can mention that the project is too broad. Okay, you need to be more specific, or this is just incremental research, or the work plan is not detailed. Okay. Now I will pass to some resources that I think they are quite useful for preparing the proposal. You can check all the ERC funded projects in the different projects. You can filter by country, but also by panel. As mentioned before, you can check some winning proposals in this repository. Okay, you can also filter by panel, and you can read the part B1 and B2 of many proposals. This is very useful. Also, there are some blogs with some tips for preparing the proposal, but also for preparing the interview that you can check. There are many in internet. You can look for them. This is an Angevante article that was published some years ago, with also the experience when preparing the ERC StG grant, that I think is also very useful to read. And finally, these are the videos recorded by the ERC that are on YouTube. You can check. There are some more related to the writing part, but also for the interview preparation that are very, very nice. And these are my final remarks, just summarizing all the things that I say here. So demonstrate why your proposal will have a huge impact on the field and why you are the right person, but also why you are in the best place to do it. You need to emphasize these things. Try to find a good balance between risk and feasibility. Of course, there are some parts of your proposal that will be more risky, but other less risk. And show excitement when writing, because your proposal needs to be exciting. And also, I mentioned this a lot during the presentation, but this is very important. Have as much feedback as possible from different researchers and professors. And finally, last but not least, enjoy the process, because I also enjoy a lot the process of writing and preparing the interview. And that's all from my side. If you have questions, I will be happy to answer them after the other two presentations. Okay. Right.
Thanks a lot, Manuel, for this very informative and comprehensive overview. Yeah, as Manuel just said, feel free to already post your questions as they come to you in the chat. We will have a general Q&A session after the 3 presentations. And with that, let's hand it over to Peter. Yes, perfect. I can see your screen. Go ahead.
Thank you. So yeah, I'm from Budapest, Hungary. So I missed to say that I applied in 2022. This is the details of my project if you want to have a look after that. And from Hungary, I can offer some perspective on EU13 side of things. I can echo to take advantage of Manuel's advice and start with these excellent resources. These figures are just screenshots from the ERC official YouTube training video, and they list some questions about what sort of points you need to address in your proposal. So I highly encourage everyone to look at these resources and consider them. In my case, it was still the requirement to have high gain and high risk. No, this high risk aspect is lifted, which is I think is a good progress. Still, in my case, I had to show that there is risk, but this is mitigated by the good idea, by the team, by my expertise. So it was generally not a good idea to put serious risk on the first day of the project, maybe put it towards the end. So you have to take care that there is still significant impact. So your project has to be now feasible, and that's a new aspect from this year. Still, your project has to be groundbreaking. So just finding this balance at least in the older version of ERC was quite tricky. Now I think it's getting easier. Still, your project has to be groundbreaking, but there are hundreds of ERCs awarded in each year in all categories. So your project don't have to solve climate change or cure cancer by itself, but it has to be groundbreaking in your own sub-discipline. But it cannot be incremental. So you have to open new ideas and paths in your field. Regarding the PEI, there is also some initial contradiction maybe that you have to think about. You are just starting if you apply for the starter grant, but you already need to show in the proposal some sort of groundbreaking or independent impactful thinking in your work, and then you also need to show some sort of experience and capacity to make the project feasible. And recently, your methodology had to be in use, so not a continuation. No, I think this requirement is also lifted. So there were some contrasts between these two ends of how you think about the project, and now I think the new rules are very helpful in this respect. So start with the excellent resources, also listed by Manuel. And one of the first things you need to think about is what is your big, groundbreaking, impactful idea? If you don't have one, you need to start figuring this out. And this implies that you know your literature completely and you know what your field needs when you finish the project. Then I also, from my perspective, made some mistakes regarding the timing. So I had only 4 months, and it was a very packed, stressful time working day and night on the proposal. So give yourself more time to write, to get feedback, especially from the EU13 perspective. At least for me, it was the case that I didn't have experience at the scale of ERC, how to write such large scale projects and how to plan the proposal. So this also took some time to grow the scale of my thinking from national level schemes to ERC. Also consider the deadlines. So in my case, it was January for the submission and September for the interview, and it was extremely hard to get quality help in December and in the summer months before the deadlines, because everyone was on holiday. Especially for EU13, At least in my university, there was no ERC starter winner in the past 10 years. So, and the whole university had 3 or 4 ERC winners. So I had to be very creative and get help, even to list some names who could give advice. So if you are in EU13, this might be a more serious problem, as you cannot go to next door in your department and find multiple ERC winners. Regarding the advice, it is good to have as much as you can, but weigh them according to their relevance. So maybe someone in the administrative department or the legal department in your university or some completely different field of research can give lower quality advice or less relevant to you, and you need to take into this account. It is important to consider that the number of awards is roughly the same as the number of sub-disciplines in the panel. So for me, it was computational chemistry, and there is about 1 or 2 awards per year. So you really need to stand out and respond to ERC-specific criteria. Recycling national level grants without the ERC-specific aspect is not a good idea. Standing out also means that your proposal has to be very easy to understand. The reviewer has little time to read your proposal, so be clear, help the reviewer to understand what you want to say for the first reading. This goes for EU13 again. National level funding tend to be much smaller. Maybe you have less equipment, less opportunity for cooperation to get help. It is also more difficult to immediately hire a lot of strong team members. So this should be taken into account in your project plan to make it feasible and realistic. Regarding the budget, I am coming from a non-experimental field, and also salaries are lower in my country. So I took this seriously and asked for about 80% of the total budget, and this was appreciated in the panel. Maybe also one common mistake is to adopt the language of papers and write in write we instead of I, and this is maybe not the best idea. You need to make it very clear what is the role of your contribution, what the team members and collaborators do. Again, the new rules about the achievements of the PI and the CV is I guess, a very good direction for EU13. So in my case, the project and the CV was 50-50 in the score, and still at that time, it was not necessary to get a perfect score for the CV. For instance, for EU13, usually the mobility is outgoing, so you may not have a lot of mobility or fellowships in big name universities or research groups, and I just argue that you don't need to have all these checkboxes. You need to have some, and you need to explain your situation. For me, I could explain that even though I didn't have these mobility experience, I was able to build independent international collaborations. So this is some aspects where I can substitute this point. Also, I didn't have many high impact papers. I had 1 or 2, but my papers in the domain specific journals was very highly regarded and recognized my peers, so that was also a big plus. And I didn't have big group and large ERC level funding, but I had some little funding, so you can explain that also for the EU13 funds and awards are much smaller in terms of money. So you need to explain that, okay, this could be a major achievement in your country, but maybe it can look smaller for a panelist who is coming from a Western European country. Also, independence tends to start later in EU13 because there are lack of starter fronts, and you may be involved in a lot of early career researcher duties, like much more teaching and administration. So if you can explain those in your narrative CV, this could help a lot. If you miss too much of these things, it is a good advice to think about them in time, because they may take years to collect. By the time you get to the interview, your most important panel members read all the about 10 reviewer reports. So by that time, all your positive and negative attributes are mostly revealed. So it is not a good idea to try to hide the negatives. It is probably better to preemptively address them in your proposal and at the latest in the Q&A. For me, it was not a very easy task to prepare for the interview, because I had less experience to talk to a broad panel. I was, of course, in a lot of domain-specific conferences, but this is something different. So you need to appeal to your whole panel with your talk, and this should be a practice, as we heard. It was, again, very complicated to get help to build mock panels, because in my immediate circles there were very limited experience with ERC. The interview was online, and I think it will be still online for you. So the lack of non-verbal communication is, again, difficult. In my case, my main evaluators were exchanged, almost all of them. So I couldn't, so what I guessed about their background was not correct, because they were exchanged. So I had zero knowledge of who are they. I didn't even know their name or what is their background, but I had to be able to very rapidly respond to their questions. As Manuel said, there is about 1 minute, including the question and the answer for one question. So you have to be very quick and sharp with your response. My project is quite technical, especially in the chemistry panel. So it involves development of new equations and methodology and models, and implement them in efficient computer codes, and then apply them to chemistry and material science and biochemistry. So it's a very, very broad subject, which has to be very clearly communicated. So this is just an introductory figure where I show that of course, we are battling to build models which are at the same time accurate, and also can deal with realistic large systems. And of course, you cannot do both at the same time. So there is the big gap in the literature in the accurate and affordable methods, where I want to go with my project. So just very clearly, if you can quickly explain what is the big picture, this would be good. I want to conclude with giving you some motivation to try. So it can be frightening to apply for ERC, but the new rules are very helpful, especially for the EU13 perspective, and the gain is enormous. So you can work on your dream project, build a team you are excited to work with, and your visibility, connections, and other benefits increase a lot. Thank you very much, and I'm also happy to respond to questions.
Thanks a lot for this very insightful and also very honest presentation. I think this was probably very helpful to many people here, also those who are not from the EU13 countries. Okay, our final presentation is by Nicolo. Can you share your screen, please? Yes. Perfect. The stage is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. So I want to start. So this is actually not a fancy presentation of the previous ones. I apologize, but it's mainly a list of tips that I want to give you. And this is the story of how I prepared my ERC starting grant, and also additional tips to those that you heard until now. So I want to start first with the last thing that Peter said. So the idea should be your dream idea. So how do you know that it is the right one? So first of all, I think that you should think about something that makes you really excited. So if you are not at this stage, if you don't feel excitement about your research idea, do not even try the ERC, in my opinion. Because the ERC is about you, it's about what you like to do. And if you get funded, you can develop that idea. This is the greatness of this type of grant. So first of all, you have to be the first person excited about that. And then, of course, you should, in principle, talk about this idea to other people that you trust, people that are in your field, but also people which are not in your field, and try to understand from their type of reactions if they are also excited about that. This is a very important feedback. So if you get other people excited about your idea is good, but it's not binding, because you can propose something which is not understood at this time. So the most important thing is that you must be excited about that. And also you should ask yourself if anybody else tried this idea before. Of course, you have to know very well the state of the art. Sometimes, I mean, there are fields of research where people, they are trying to explore different type of scientific ideas, but they failed. So they failed for different reasons. Maybe the methodology was not the right one. Maybe your methodology is the right one. So you can be, since the ERC is an individual grant, you might be the missing piece of this puzzle. So you should be aware of the state of the art around you, and you should be prepared not to despair if something similar has been done before, because I can tell you that I saw many ERC proposals very similar in topic, but very different in how this idea has been developed. And also, of course, you must be an expert in your field. Manuel showed that, okay, there is that very nice article where this ERC winner, she said that you can eventually propose something outside your area of expertise, but that is, in my opinion, quite risky, in particular in the starting grant stage. But this is my personal opinion. I would say the point is you should be expert on that. You can also add additional, let's say, topics to your proposal. You can be expert in optics like me, but less expert in another field. And you have to admit that, you have to show that in your proposal. So you should be honest about that. But you should be absolutely expert on one of the fields included in your proposal. So once you get the idea, what shall you do? Again, this is very important. You have to talk to people, because people, they provide you the greatest feedback about the feasibility of your idea, if your idea makes sense or if it's physically possible. So it's very important that you talk with your colleagues. And also another thing that if you can do it, please do it, is to travel, go to conferences, talk to other people that even you don't know. Okay, because people might know you by name, but then when they meet you, they see you as a person, and they might be even panel members or reviewers of your proposal. So be aware that many people you meet in conferences, they are the external reviewers. So make yourself, put yourself in the position that you are known as an excellent scientist. This is very important, in my opinion. Of course, the ERC is an individual project. You are the PI of the project. You should be humble, as Manuel said. So you can mention collaborations, but you have also to be careful to mention, let's say, too many collaborations, because this is a personal project. You should be able to show that you are independently able to bring it to the end. Okay. And also, the other thing that you should do before start writing or even thinking about an idea is talk with other year's winners. If you know someone, you can take the list of the winners of the past year in your field, contact them. Usually they are very humble people. They can provide you feedback. So really reach the winners of past calls out, and I think you get a very valuable feedback about that. Of course, if you have experience in proposal writing, you should start to write already. If you don't have that, and if you can, you should try to ask external support. So again, you can ask a colleague to help you to put down the outline of your proposal, or ask to your university, your institution to pay for, I don't know, an external agency who can help you to write your idea down. So this is also a strategy that you can implement. So when to apply, when you feel ready, that's the point. Sometimes you can not feel ready, like I was not feeling ready, but people were telling me, I think you should apply for an ERC because you have these ideas. And so trust also people around you. I am a person that sometimes lack of self-confidence. So I mean, ask a feedback around, do you think I'm ready for the ERC? You explain your idea, and people can tell you, okay, you are ready because the CV is the right one. Your idea is great, so you should go. Of course, if you have a productive postdoc, you can even try the first year you are eligible, so almost 3 years after the PhD, because panels, usually they normalize the CV, so they don't consider your application, if you apply the 3rd year after your PhD, as an application of a person who applied the last year. So the best time, as Manuel mentioned, I think is also the 5th year, so you have 2 more calls in front of you if you don't pass the first time. It's very rare that people, they get a C, so usually you get an A or a B. So if you get a B, you have to wait 1 year. Keep into account that by the end of the 7th year after your PhD, your CV will most likely look like an ERC consolidator. So I saw also people not getting the starting grant the last year, they applied to the consolidator and they got it. So also that can be a thing that you can think about. So my experience, I want to go brief. So I had an idea, but I never watched the videos in the ERC. I just talked with people around me. I discussed with friends, with colleagues about the feasibility, about the risk, about the gain. And the panel will evaluate this a lot. I heard the panelists saying, this project is really great, it's great science, but it will never work. And still they funded it because they thought perhaps there will be at the end a way to realize this idea. So think to something that you really think is feasible, but can be also kind of not too much crazy, but yet you can think great, you can dream. And then I wrote the B1. I spent 3 months on it, and every line cost me almost 1 week of reading and additional work. And this was a suggestion by a panelist that to write a good B1. In the ERC videos, they actually suggested the opposite. And then I wrote the B2 in 10 days before the deadline. That was very bad because I was not personally satisfied about it. And then I thought it was containing a lot of weaknesses in the methodology, and also the expected results from the final experiments were not clear to myself first, but also, of course, in the proposal. So, I mean, I think it was a weak B2 proposal. Yes, and of course, when you write, you should show that you are the only person in principle that can do that. This is extremely important also to show the vision about the impact of your idea in 10 years in your field. You don't have to win the Nobel Prize. You just need to show that your idea can have an impact in your research field. And I did it alone. I didn't have any support from research support offices or an external agency. Sometimes people, they have a lot of this type of help. I just asked feedback from scientists. So, because the ERC is about science. So the B2 is just methodology and to show that you are really the owner of the idea and you can do that. There is not that type of, let's call it bullshit about impact, like in the other European projects where you have to say that you are going to save the world. No, ERC is about the science. And then I was invited for the interview, and I started that time to watch the videos also about the interview. I started to prepare. I did some training that was organized by, at the time, the Swedish Research Council. I talked with the many panelists, former winners. So this was a huge help for me. And then I did a lot of mock interviews with friends and colleagues, also with my group. And then I was not so self-confident because I knew that the B2 was very weak, and the interview was at the time an awful experience for many reasons. And then I left. I finished the interview with this thought in mind. The thought was I did not get it. And in fact, I got B in step 2, so I was not funded. I was sad, of course, but also I was aware of the weaknesses. So that was not a good news. I mean, a totally bad news about that. Unfortunately, I received the feedback after the deadline for the 2023 call, so I could revise my proposal based only on the interview questions, which are mainly based on the reviewers' reports. And then the second round, I improved a lot the B2. That time I had a very clear idea about the final experiment and everything. I slightly modified the B1. I was called again for the interview. This time I got A, but I was in the reserve list. I was the first in my reserve list. And so I prepared again for the 2024 call. And after 18 reports about panelists and external reviewers, I think my project was strong enough. But keep in mind that people can always find a weakness in your proposal. So your proposal will never be perfect. Can look perfect to you, but then if you reread it after a few months, you will find other weaknesses. So it will never be perfect. And then I received the news that I got it in December. And just to conclude about the narrative CV, so I want to show you my old CV in 2022. So this was as it was structured. So you have this list of things. There is a template. Peter and Manuel, they showed you also similar things. So I don't want to go too much into the details. And then this is the other part where you should talk about your early achievements. So I just talk about my experience as PhD student, as a young postdoc, as junior group leader, etc. And then I was giving some, let's say, numbers in terms of independence. And then I was showing some selected papers where I just put briefly my contribution. And also I made clear how this publication can show both that I can do the project and how they relate with the project. So that is quite important. But the last time in the narrative CV, I don't know if this is a good one. Maybe Lynn can comment on that later because she's more expert than me on that. But let's say that in this case, there is just a short part with bullet points about the education, position, and previous positions. But then there is a huge part where I wrote, in this case, I was allowed to write at least up to 10 publications. So I use that. And for each publication, I try to provide an explanation of why they are important. You see, they are not in high impact factor journals, but I was the main author, the last author of that. And that is kind of important to show that. So I didn't work with big names. I didn't work in big institutions, in Ivy Leagues, in Europe or in US, but still I was able to show that I can do science by myself and that I am excited about that. And then there is a part where you can show some peer recognition, can be awards, can be the organization of conferences. I stressed a lot that because I'm organizing many conferences. I highlighted, for instance, that I was, I received some grants or some awards. And then I spent more than one page to provide my contribution to the community, not as a scientist, but for instance, in being a reviewer for proposals, in participating in science policy activities, in being part of the Young Academy of Europe, in being a mentor, a coach for research integrity. So if you do these activities, just write that down because it's important to show that you are not doing only, let's say, research or teaching, because you are doing many things and sometimes they're not even considered. And I think they should be. So with this, I would like to conclude. Maybe I hope I didn't exceed too much the time. If you have questions, of course, I'm here to answer your questions. And I will then provide the PDF, I think, to the organizers. If you want, maybe they can provide you the PDF of my presentation later.
Thanks a lot. That was also very, very insightful. And thanks for highlighting that it's really, really worth trying again. It's very normal to get rejected. And it's good to try again and again and again. Yes. We have time for questions. By the way, I want to mention this session is recorded, as you've probably seen. So this will all be published on YouTube. So you will be able to go back to this and also see all the slides. So we've already had a question in the chat that was actually posted quite early about basically how to distinguish yourself from your postdoc project. If you're still quite early after your first postdoc or your PhD, when you're submitting the ERC starting grant. So this was posted when Manuel was still speaking. So maybe Manuel, you can give a first answer to this question.
Yeah, regarding the first question, in my case, I was not a postdoc. I was already an assistant professor in Portugal. So I was already independent. But of course, part of your previous experience on some fields, you will take advantage of this experience for the new project, but cannot be the same. I think it's nice to merge different fields, as mentioned by Nicolo, taking advantage of your previous experience from your postdoc, but also from your PhD, and trying to extrapolate this knowledge to another field or trying to merge different fields. In this sense, I think you can be different from the work that has been done during your postdoc, for example. I don't know if Peter and Nicolo agree.
Yes, so I think as we heard in the first part of today from Maria Leptin, this is not a explicit requirement to propose completely new methodology compared to your previous research, but so I guess this gives you more freedom to include something from your postdoc or even PhD. But I think you should be careful if you propose something radically new, because you need to know at least the literature of the new field. So there is no excuse in the interview or in the proposal if, like, okay, saying this is new for me. You need to know that field as well, what is possible and what is feasible and what can you bring from the new field. And then you gain experience when you do the project. So.
Yeah, I don't have anything actually to add, except maybe, yes, you should definitely show that you are, that you propose something that comes from you and not from your supervisor. If you propose an idea which is similar to the research line of your supervisor, that is not going to work. I know people get into the interview and the question was, what makes you different from your supervisor? They couldn't answer, they didn't get it. So, and that's very important. You can even have the same question and explain what makes you unique and different, and you still can get it. Because I know also about people who got the same question, they answered very well, and they got it. But if you look at these profiles from the outside, they look like, you know, working in the group of the supervisor. So that can be a weakness. And you should avoid, as Peter said, to write a radically new idea if you are still in the first years after your PhD, because that is not, I think, the credibility of your experience will not be supported by facts, and reviewers and panelists, they will look at that.
Yeah, I guess it can be a fine line, right? To make sure that you are within your field of knowledge, but distinguish yourself well enough. And you might get the question of how you distinguish yourself from other people working in related fields. In any case, it is a very likely question, so it's very good to be prepared for that type of question. You will probably not work in a field where you are completely reinventing the wheel or do something entirely different, but you still can show to a panel why you are distinguished enough from others doing something similar. Okay, we have more questions. There's a question by Floriana Coppola saying, first of all, thanks for the great presentations, and about interdisciplinary projects and basically how to choose the panel in that case. Who wants to give this a shot?
I can one, because I had the same doubt between two panels, chemistry and materials engineering. So of course, in my case, I can put my example. I had a lot of experience on the materials, but probably not on the application for batteries, because in my case, I developed some organic electrodes for batteries. Finally, I chose the panel of materials engineering because my topic was most focused on the materials, not on the applications, on the design of the materials. I think we can also choose a secondary panel, as mentioned here. I didn't do this, but I know that some people can put a secondary panel in case that the panel members think that they should go to another panel, they can take this decision.
Yeah.
I can also quickly. Sorry, Peter, do you want to go?
Just very quickly. So I think you may consider where your project causes more excitement in the panel. So if your topic is multidisciplinary, for example, for me, I apply methods from physics, from computer science, even from mathematics, but the new thing is bringing them together in chemistry. So the excitement is in the applications. What kind of problems can I solve with the new methodology? So I can just recommend that consider from the panel's perspective where you bring more novelty, more impact.
Yeah, thank you, Nicolo.
I wanted to add that interdisciplinary can mean many things, because in my case, I mixed 3 research fields, but within condensed matter. So it was very interdisciplinary, but it was within the domain of my panel, which is PA3, condensed matter, because I put ultrafast science, nanophotonics, and magnetism. So 3 quite different fields merged in a proposal. So in that case, I don't suggest you to look at other type of let's say this possibility to submit it to 2 different panels. But if your idea merges something from condensed matter and biology, then I suggest you to look at this possibility to submit to 2 different panels, because if one panel does not like too much your proposal, you might be lucky to be considered by the other panel. And what I saw is a pattern that if you propose something that is seen like standard in one specific field, but exotic in another one, you might go very quickly to the interview and the panel can support your idea. I know people who, in my field, nanophotonics, all the people applying to P7, almost all of them, they got the grant, because P7 was about system engineering. There was inside robotics and other things. And we were proposing something that the majority of the panelists, they didn't really, they were not expert about that, but they were really excited about the idea of squeezing light and manipulate light, these type of things. So again, think also about that, can be a strategy. And you should talk in any way with the panel members, former panel members, actual panel members, if you know them, and they can for sure give you the best advice on this.
Thank you. Another question by Iga Levine about the novelty of the idea. Let's suppose there are recently just 1 or 2 publications on a similar idea, but you have basically a new methodology. Is it high risk enough still? Peter, can you maybe start on this?
Yeah, so I think you no longer need to be very high risk. And it was previously also the case that even if you have high risk, you need to show that your approach and your methodology is feasible, at least the larger portion. So I think if there is a hint in the literature that some other people are thinking about it, you just need to be honest and need to show how your idea is different. The ERC is not about only 1 or 2 publications, it's about maybe 20 or 30 publications over 5 years. So if you have a little overlap with someone else, it's okay, I think.
Yeah. Does any of the other 2 want to say something else about this?
In my case, regarding the high risk, in my project, there are some parts that are more risky than other ones, of course. And also related to the new ideas, in the evaluation that I received, the report, I received some comments highlighting that in some cases I didn't propose any new concept, but sometimes I propose to put some concepts from other fields, for example, from the field of organic conductors, and I incorporate these concepts to a new field, to the field of COPs and MOS, etc. So sometimes it's not necessary to have a super new idea instead of extrapolating some concepts from one field to another field. I think in my case, this was a very important part in my project.
Yeah, I also received a similar comment. Actually, one of the reviewers said this is a combination of 3 different ideas, whose combination is straightforward. That was the comment. And then other people, they said, no, this is a new way to use this concept in this field, or this is a new way to combine things to obtain something new. So it's also the way you combine ideas. So, I mean, 1, 2 papers in a specific, I mean, if they did the experiment you are planning to do, of course, that is no more novel. But I mean, I wrote my application on ultra-fast magnetism, is a 20-year-old research field. And I propose a new way to manipulate spins using plasmons. Okay, maybe some of you, you don't know what plasmons are, but the point is, someone can say, okay, and why you don't do it in this way? And you can answer to that question to the interview, or you can write the proposal to answer to that question. The point is, novelty is also very subjective, and the most important thing is, if you're excited, if you think that your idea can have an impact on your field, that is the way to go. Then, of course, it's a very much longer discussion. There is no time not to do that.
Yeah, I think it also goes back to this point to gauge basically by talking to people in your field how people feel about it. Sort of on average, you will always get that one or two reviewers who will basically say, this is kind of already done. I think it's almost impossible to avoid this. In the interest of time, let's get to the last question by Sasha Djukovic, who's asking how to estimate what is not a continuation of what you previously did, since you have to somehow connect to your previous work as well, but still develop something new. Can one of you reply to this?
Well, in my case, I changed the type of materials and also changed the type of applications. But of course, I think the best way is, to change a little bit from what you are doing in your postdoc. Not complete, as mentioned before, you don't need to complete to change to another field. But I think you need to highlight how you are differentiated from your supervisors. If the panel members look like they don't recognize as independence from your supervisors, you are done. I think you need to be able to differentiate from your work at postdoc. So I think I think it's difficult to give you an exact answer to these questions, but I think in my case I changed the type of materials and applications, but it depends on your situation. Yeah.
I did something similar, I guess, because the idea of the ERC is in the field of my PhD work, but then I combined all the expertise I acquired as a postdoc later on. So I show that I can have an idea on a topic that is associated with my supervisor, let's say, name, but he's not doing that. Exactly. I mean, he's not applying ultra-fast science in the field where I did my PhD. And that was a way to show that I can do something new, even in a field where I did my PhD on. This is another way to show not continuation with the past. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you shouldn't do exactly the same. And I think this question also goes to what is incremental research and what is the impact. So if you are working on a huge problem, you can work on it during your lifetime, and this can be impactful work. So you need to show that you did A before and you are just not substituting something on the same level with B, and then nobody can continue that or build on that. You need to provide some impact, and also for yourself and for your field, need to show how people can build on that, how it opens a new valuable field. So a little continuation is okay, I think. Especially if you are going to a direction which has huge impact.
Yeah. Okay, thanks very much, everyone. I've just one comment from my side. I've posted a link in the chat to a previous event that we organized on specifically the narrative CV, if you are searching for more resources on that topic. With that, we are ending this session. Thank you very much, Nicolo, Manuel, and Peter, for these great presentations and insights and for taking the time. Thanks to everyone for attending and your questions. And good luck with your ERC starting grants. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.